Make no attempt to reload your device. You are now entering the Hellhole.
Oh, you didn't know? We're live, pal! Man, it's been a couple of months. I am internet sensation Big Lucifer. We're in the Hellhole, and we're live, pal! Live to Twitch, and this will be in the YouTube archive. You may be watching it there, particularly if you've been following the adventures of Capcom Wrestling Association and Saturday Night Slam Masters. It's kind of taken over everything in the Hellhole. I haven't been streaming as much. Things have been really hectic. We had, we've covered the saga of the flooding. We're still in the rebuild phase. Things have slowed down a little bit. You got to juggle all these things. We're juggling things now because it is the anniversary of the first episode of Saturday Night Slam Masters, and I thought it would be nice just to look back and chat about everything that sort of went into it and where things are at. So I don't know. This is very unplanned. You're going to have to bear with me. I may not be at my best, but I will always be my sensational internet self. I don't know what that even means. This is the intro. This was a pretty easy idea to come up with. Essentially, I didn't feel I had the tools or resources to recreate any of the intros for Saturday Night Slam Masters from the games or anything like that, so I thought I would try to I thought it would be better to come up with something that sort of vaguely alludes to it but does something new. I wanted to incorporate Street Fighter 6 and root what we were doing in Street Fighter 6's World Tour and Metro City. I thought it would be interesting, the way that, you used to have wrestling territories and places would have a bit of a home base. I guess they're, you sort of think of New York City maybe as WWE's home base, although they're obviously a global entity these days. Maybe the Orlando relationship that TNA had for a long time when they were filming Impact, wherever that was, and sort of that was almost the continuation of the relationship that WCW had with certain theme parks and things like that. So I just thought it would be fun to use as much of the CWA lore, the Capcom lore, and really try to just squeeze everything we could out of it. I knew that I wanted it to be sort of contemporary in the Street Fighter universe, and that meant Mike Hager would be retired, and it just makes sense. You got a retired major star, a former mayor. We know he's retired from Street Fighter 6, so let's make him the commissioner. No brainer. And I guess the premise, we're kind of trying to have it both ways, because I've incorporated a lot of the established storylines from the games throughout, the Street Fighter canon, the Muscle Bomber Slam Masters canon. We brought all that stuff in, but I guess the concept is that CWA has been operating for however long. Your timelines are going to vary. But the idea is that essentially, perhaps Victor Ortega has left the promotion in the lurch. He's felt that he hasn't gotten his competition. He's gone off. He's disappeared, and then without a world champion, maybe their television broadcast failed and collapsed. So they've continued to operate as a promotion, but the idea is that this is sort of a rebuild phase, and in that rebuild concept, you have sort of a reduced roster, knowing knowing full well that we would be doing the Crash Carnival World Tour and use that as a way to sort of rebuild the roster. And to me, some of the fun was incorporating a lot of the lesser known elements and trying to make that work with the, like, you know, NPCs from Street Fighter 6 World Tour. Throughout the entire thing, occasionally you get somebody will show up in the comments, which is always, to me, that's half the fun. Somebody's like, hey, who's this character? I don't recognize that. Who's the jerk in the red t-shirt? That kind of thing. And we're like, hey, check this out. We're pulling in some cool sort of obscure references from, you know, from Street Fighter 6, from Slam Masters itself, you know, the United and Mighty, the guys in the red shirts. They're not here yet in the first episode, but I knew that that was a real priority because I wanted to squeeze everything I could out of the Muscle Bomber series, and I always just found that fascinating. There's that, I think they're the second time you finish the game. They come out, the three guys in red come out to challenge you, the champ, and I just thought it'd be really cool to get to play that out a little further. Those characters don't have names, so for the most part, I'm trying to, you know, I'm trying to remain loyal, remain a certain amount of fealty to the material and everything that's established, but I am trying to also contribute creatively and establish new things. So those guys that show up in the second ending from the first Muscle Bomber game, they don't have an official name. I did put a lot of research in to try to find out if there was anything from the files or anything like that. I think I talked to some of the Udon comics guys who've sort of been heavily involved with working on like the encyclopedias and things like that and trying to curate all that stuff. The comics, probably their status as canon, I imagine, is fluid. Second party companies just don't have the authority to make, you know, official canon out of their licensed material. But the comics are pretty good, and obviously we've been pulling from the comics too. The IJWPW characters have really only, as far as I know, have really only existed in the comics. And of course, Street Fighter V, Capcom established their database on the website with all the obscure characters, expanded on them slightly, so we've been pulling all of those references in as well. That was a good time. Street Fighter V, trying to think, did we get new? I don't think we got new wrestling characters. I might be overlooking something. Obviously, we've been referencing Street Fighter V, though. Of course, that's where Alex returned, and so you do have in the Street Fighter V story mode, there is a CWA cutscene. They developed a new logo. I was never able to find a good clean image of it, so I haven't used that new logo. I've gone back to the classic logo. I prefer this logo that's on the ring and our watermark for the screen. WWF style, WWE style. I prefer that. I think that's a better logo. The new one's fine, but it's essentially the letters. If I could have found a good clean version of it or made my own, I've been making a lot of my own graphics. I would have put it on t-shirts or something, and I did try to recreate that arena that's in Street Fighter V. I think, from memory, it's Alex and Max are fighting, and is that the Summer Carnival Championship? I think it is, which is an event that we went to. You know, these first two episodes sort of build to the Summer Carnival Championship. Summer Carnival Championship gets us a new world champion, or so we think, and then, you know, things continue from there. So I'm really just trying to pull in as many references as I can and weave them together naturally, and then try to come up with new stuff. And to me, that's a lot of the fun. You know, I like that. I've been a wrestling fan for a long time. Many moons ago, I ran it wasn't an E-Fed, it was an I-Fed. It was like, it was interactive text-based stuff on IRC. So I did that for in 2002, 2004. I was writing for ProWrestling.com. I had a column there for a little while. It didn't end well. I was a bit of a jackass about it, really, with the way I was writing things, and, you know, I was a kid, basically, up to no good on the internet, I guess. But, you know, that's, if some of you know me, it's probably from various exploits writing online. You know, I've involved myself in a lot of things. I tend not to talk about them because I don't think crossing the streams is always helpful. I might be able to leverage those things better, but I just tend to find my interests are a little bit disparate. You know, it is kind of like, you know, for a long time there, wrestling was a bit of embarrassment for trying to get, even advertisers, like talking about the actual promotions. They would have issues with things like that, and maybe you wouldn't be forthcoming about things like that. So, I never really felt that there was a great gain to cross the wrestling with some of the comic stuff or some of the other gaming stuff. It just gets a little bit complicated, and I like to try to keep it simple, but it does mean essentially starting from scratch. There's been some great response on the YouTube comments, because these episodes, I haven't really been streaming them. I've done periods where I've streamed some of the events just to try to raise awareness and evolve the Twitch side of things, particularly because I've been so inactive on Twitch lately. I'm thinking I might even start with episode 1, go through and just re-air them, rebroadcast them, reruns, maybe on Saturdays, because we now have a year's worth of events, because we just had the anniversary special last Saturday, although when these actually go up for me, it's Sunday. I do want to shout out from the first episode, the comments, we got Red1906 and Craig Malley 11080. These guys are right there in the first episode. I mean, they actually, the red one is 6 months ago, so it's cool. But yeah, I absolutely encourage everyone, if you're checking out classic episodes, if you're going through the playlist, leave comments, because that really helps me to just keep in the mindset of it all. And it's just nice to get some feedback, because see, that's something, like back in the day, I would play Extreme Warfare Revenge, EWR. Actually, my iFed stuff, I actually talked to the guy to try to get, I probably talked to him in 2003, 2004, to try to get him to maybe incorporate like a gameplay system so you could play as a wrestler in EWR, which I think he did later. I don't know. He ripped me off, man? I don't know. It's fine. Actually, that's really weird, because I've got YouTube up and there is a Extreme Warfare Revenge video being recommended. That's weird. That's New Legacy Inc. I've been checking those guys out. They do a lot of great stuff with the video games. They do all the games. But they're a channel that's doing the MyGM mode, and things like MyGM and EWR Revenge, they have to be objective because they're pre-made systems. So essentially, like the WWE 2K games have really, there's a lot of systems in those MyGM modes to make them work, and try to make it a little bit more interesting. But ultimately, it's always an objective thing. And in reality, when you're booking a real wrestling thing, like how many times has something weird, unexpected got over? And that's stuff that I quite like. It's and making more of a subjective assessment and deciding like how is this working creatively? Is this working? Is it coming together? You make adjustments as you go, things like that. Yeah, so that's the kind of thing that I like. So if I get comments about things, it's nice to sort of make informed assessments. For a while there, I was months ahead, but when we had flooding in the house and everything went crazy and there was construction, I did whittle away my little buffer. I had an 8-episode buffer when this first went to air, when this was live. I started doing all this in February. And of course, this episode went up at the end of June. I think, when was it? It was June 24th. So we're a little bit removed from the actual anniversary now. Catching up though. I tried to make notes. See, I do keep I keep notes for every episode when I'm sort of planning it out. This was I'd booked way in advance, really from the start. I had gone through the International Blowout event, which was September. I had a lot of ideas beyond that. I knew that I was essentially going to mirror the WWE schedule to some extent. There's been a lot of interesting synchronicity with the Netflix era, the Triple H era. They've gone back to sort of old school wrestling principles, and that's meant there's been some interesting synchronicity. I do something and then they do it right after. They do something and I've already done it, but to be aired after. So even like we did the Summer Carnival Championship, which is almost sort of a King of the Ring vibe, and they brought King of the Ring back. So that was sort of a funny bit of synchronicity. There's been a lot of interesting little things like that along the way. I'm kind of ignoring the episode that's on the screen. I kind of, mixed feelings about that. My notes are very simple, so there's not really a lot of insight. I've got the matches listed. I early on I was recording the times of each match. When I record them, I record the matches individually. You got to plan out sort of how that's going to work, because my idea was to keep it manageable to watch and to make. Essentially, Saturday Night Slam Masters is a half-hour program, but like all the great wrestling, there is an overrun, maybe a 10-minute overrun, so maybe a little bit more. So some episodes blow out to like the 40-minute mark, essentially. We're shooting for 30 minutes. Our ad breaks are considerably shorter. None of this is really entirely legitimate, but hey, maintain kayfabe. So, yeah. I guess I should mention too, I did actually, if you know me from the oneup.com days, I was a regular blogger. I was featured many times by oneup.com, which was really cool. I did start incorporating, as I was doing regular blogging. Essentially, I was focusing on gaming, but then I started to talk about wrestling. Inevitably, I turned everything into wrestling, I think. So June 2009, I did start doing a text version, essentially writing out like text results for Slam Masters events. The orientation of it all was pretty different, but so essentially that was the germ of the idea. Back then, I was thinking of, who's that band? I can't remember who the band is that did a version of Saturday Night. So Saturday Night is a Bay City Rollers song. And there was a version that was in So I Married an Axe Murderer that was sort of like it was on the radio or whatever in the mid-90s. Back then, I was thinking that would be the theme. Of course, flash forward to 2024 when we're doing this. I didn't want to deal with copyright and all that kind of stuff. And I also, the problem with that version is it's got a really like rockin' intro, and then it just becomes the weediest, like lamest version of the song. So I didn't want that. Back then, I was thinking, for some reason, I was fixated on the music from the intro of Cromartie High, or whatever it was called. I wasn't like a particular fan of the show, although I did love, there's like a character, I guess he's a teacher or something, that's like modeled on Freddie Mercury. And I guess maybe in my mind, I was connecting the dots with Mike Hagger and things like that. I don't know. There was some sort of logic. But yeah, essentially, I thought, it'd be nice to have some version of Saturday Night as the intro theme for what we're doing. And then I found this Japanese school kids one. It was like, well, Muscle Bomber's a Japanese game. It might be nice. It's not the rockin', you're thinking wrestling, you're thinking of like a rockin' intro theme, but I kind of thought like, nah, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's got an interesting flavor to it. So we went with that, with sort of like the Japanese kids, the girls singing, and I like it. I think that's kind of fun. I like, I tried to keep the intro small, seeing this, the Hellhole intro is a long one. That's because I'm doing this live to Twitch, and I got to settle in, so having a bit of a longer intro is good for me for that. But for weekly half-hour episodes, I was thinking keep it short, so it's really just the best bit of the song. It's that intro portion of the song, and we get right into it. Sort of sets the scene, but I like the ritual of that. I like the ritual of setting the scene. Obviously, in this episode, we didn't have the Capcom logo. I was already thinking about it, and essentially, I wanted that specific Capcom logo. I forget what games that appeared in, and I forget, is that like a late 90s? It's like 98, 99. I think it appears in a few specific games. Somebody tried to do an AI, like upscaled HD version, but their version had like horrible artifacting. So if you've ever noticed, there's something weird going on with the M. It's because I essentially rotoscoped it. I like try to paint out the horrible pixelation. So you ever notice there's something odd about that M in the intro of Capcom? That's why, because essentially I had to come up with a really lo-fi solution, and all I could do was sort of like frame by frame try to paint over it. So there's a bit of a misstep. Because syncing that up. We're missing all the wrestling here. I'm not even commenting on it. Hopefully the audio's alright. I tried to test it before I came in here. Audio is always a nightmare for me. My voice is very inconsistent. I don't really know what I'm doing. And I think that's evident, particularly in these early episodes. The commentary, the audio's off. Like it gets it peaks a little too much. You can see those red lines a lot. But I often have an issue then where if I try to correct it, it just gets way too quiet, and I personally don't like things that are quiet. This ad hopefully is not causing any troubles right now. If you're watching this, we got through it. I don't know what to tell you, but I maybe should have planned ahead and had something obscuring this because I stopped using this. It's only in the first episode, maybe the second episode. I had to re-edit those episodes to remove these WWE 2K, is it 2-4 at that stage, ads. I thought it would just be a nice homage to the fact that we're using the 2K 223 game. I thought it would be appropriate. But these jerks had other ideas. Essentially, I think the video causes the copyright strike, and I had to take it out. So it's blocked in some places. I don't know where. So if you haven't been able to watch it, if you're missing the first episode, I apologize. But at this stage, I thought first episode's uploaded. Discovered the problem. I think it's in the second episode, but it's different ads and maybe wasn't as much of a problem. I don't know. Are we addressing everything we need to be addressing? I don't know. I feel like I'm very scattershot. This is how I operate. That's not changing. I'm trying to think. I did there is a wiki out there if you go looking, but I did not keep up updating it, so there's very little information there, but it helps me stay organized. I'm trying to think. I did try to make sort of notes about things, about some of the thought process. Some people are interested in that kind of thing. You might not be. I better get rid of that logo because the ad is finished. Who's coming out here? What's the match? I think this is match 3. And essentially, in terms of the roster, I knew that the International World Tour was going to be... Essentially, I'm looking like, okay, here's the Muscle Bomber classic characters. We got to reduce... for the sake, because I'm looking at these episodes as sort of introductions for people who might not know these characters. I think, I gather like over the years, a lot of people have tried to do this with WWE 2K, like create a wrestler things. To me, I did think about it, particularly back in 2009, but the games just were not there. And I haven't played, I haven't played a WWE game since SmackDown vs. Raw 2006. That was the last game I'd played. I fell out because of something I think it gets everyone eventually. They add something, but then they break a couple of things. They add some stuff, they break a few things, and I just got fed up. To that point, I had skipped one. I skipped the 2005 game. But before that, I had been on board since SmackDown. And, I was a WWF Warzone and Attitude guy before that. So, so I was coming to this. I'd sort of occasionally would dip in and see, like, what's the 2K games looking like? Oh, they got an Attitude Era thing going on. That's cool. But never quite sold. And then I saw 2K23 and I thought, gee, I'd like to do something regularly on the Hellhole YouTube. And this just seemed like now's the time. I think enough is there. Obviously, at this stage, they've closed the WWE 2K23 servers, so you can see there's custom graphics here. The Los Dragones Eternus masks with the sort of like claw scratch. I had to make that. I incorporated some clip art elements and did the different colors, recreating the guys. So there's a lot of those guys in Street Fighter 6 World Tour in different combinations. There's sort of like a set list of names and set list of gear, and it randomizes different characters. So you might see Bad Faith Question, and he doesn't look like that. That's the Bad Faith Question that I encountered, and that some other people have encountered. And if you keep going back, you might eventually get this one. But I was impressed by 2K23's ability to both contain a lot of appropriate gear. You can see I've made do with some things. The early El Stinger, I had not made. Yeah, I tried to make a version of the classic mask. It's not quite right. The dimensions of the white bits are a little bit off and things like that. A lot of this was like a learning period for me. I was finding my way as I went. But I was impressed by the fact that there was a lot of good material. I could sort of make good approximations of all the main characters, and then with adding your own custom graphics and things, I could really fill that out, and we've got some of the best things I think that we've had. It's varied. I think the quality of each character has varied a little bit, and I've tried to embellish where I can, add little details. I've juggled, particularly in these early episodes, you can see, because I was working from February to this point, but there was still, I was trying to make all these characters, I make everything from scratch, essentially. So I was making the arenas, the characters, whatever. The move sets, even in recent ones, you'll notice occasionally they're doing some sort of like taunt that is just not right. The taunts were often the last thing I would get to. So some characters are still doing the wrong taunts. I recently just fixed Alex. I gave him appropriate taunts because he was doing the generic, I think he does the Cesaro, wabam, arm guns or whatever, and he was doing the kung fu pose or the karate pose. So I fixed Alex. If he taunts, it'll be more appropriate. These things are always works in progress, and if you ever see something and you say, hey, what's going on there? Can you fix that? I might get to it sooner. I don't mind people suggesting things. A lot of the time I'm gonna be evasive. I might not follow through. But there's been some cool suggestions. I like that. People interpreting things. I try not to get too squirrely with storylines and things like that, but obviously the speculation element can be quite fun, and sometimes it's getting away from me. Sometimes I switch things up a little too much, and maybe I'll try to adjust here and there. There's a dude that's in the comments, Akimeru or something, who was he seems to have some enthusiasm for the heck, who I thought that was funny. So the heck has kind of been elevated, and maybe partly because he was saying, hey, I dig the heck, so it's like, all right, well, I got an idea here, and we could embellish that. The heck has taken off lately. He's not here yet. He shows up at the Summer Carnival Championship. He's going to be in this year's Summer Carnival Championship coming up, so if you're in the YouTube, make sure you subscribe, like, do all those things, leave comments. Comments are great. Comments give me a little bit of juice because I fatigue. Lately, the whole CWA thing has just been kicking my ass, and it's really been... Destiny of the Strongest was the first one where I was up, I think for Destiny of the Strongest, I was up until like 11 a.m., no sleep, to finish that thing. I think it still went up late. The upload is always hit and miss. We had one recently where it was atrociously late because of Windows updates. If you are having problems on your computer, strange inconsistencies, it's probably Windows updates. Mysterious Budo just won the match. Mysterious Budo is an interesting case. Man, we are missing so many things. I don't know. I almost need a second go around on the first episode to address what's going on. Mysterious Budo I want to mention though, because when I was booking things out early, Mysterious Budo is a character that I really like, and you may or may not detect my preferences here and there. I try to go with what makes sense, what works, try to, keep things even, exploit as much as I can. Mysterious Budo would be a character that I particularly like though. But early on, essentially, I knew I wanted him to be one of the early characters who's back in the roster from this early point. But as I was planning it out, he went from being like, favorite character, I want this guy involved. He was the odd man out. I had nothing for him. And it was the Summer Carnival Championship where he suddenly becomes a feature. So there is an organic aspect to a lot of this. And that's something that I really enjoy about simulating the matches. The majority of matches are all simulated results. It's not very often that I really pursue a determined outcome. I have done that. Some of these results have been predetermined. But for me, it's hugely helpful to get a bit of stimulus from the fact that I don't know who's going to win, and I can pivot. I think a couple of people have asked over the way, like, how are you determining these things? How do you put it all together? So that's one of the keys. And then, so essentially I'm booking things ahead of time. In the case of Mysterious Budo, he obviously became a featured character throughout the Crash Carnival period, the World Tour, because I had sort of left a bit of room here and there to have more responsive elements. So sometimes I might book something and the idea is essentially fixed. It doesn't really matter what the results are. It'll just tweak the context of what's happening. So sometimes because I guess you're seeing the finished product, it can seem like it could go no other way. But sometimes, yeah, it'll be, if the result had gone another way, the context would just change slightly. The aggressor might flip or something like that. These goofballs, the Angry Accountants. So these are early NPCs you will encounter in Street Fighter 6 World Tour. If you head to the Hellhole, you can actually see my playthrough of World Tour. I'm really early still, and unfortunately I didn't record all of my sessions, so some of these characters might not actually show up in my playthrough. I encountered them independently. But these guys are early on. These are like in the finance district of Metro City and just hanging out in the streets. And I just thought it was funny, like these like crazy office workers who are tearing away. These accountants have gone mad. I didn't realize at first glance. The first time I saw them, I thought they'd taken their ties off and tied it like Rambo style, which I thought was very funny. I didn't notice they've got like a crisscross. I'm not sure. Maybe there are some that have the tie around their head like a headband. If there is, I don't remember it. Of course, because I have progressed, some things I can't see again, so I couldn't go back. And there's surprisingly little information about some of this stuff, so I think that's why some people aren't aware of these characters when they come and watch this. So exploiting the world tour was a big thing. Right until pretty late, I was having issues with the Russian show in the world tour because I kind of decided I don't really want to get involved in politics and things like that. But again, in that idea of how the subjective aspect of booking in real life and that kind of thing, and trying to, play in that kind of mode, I thought, okay, let's look at the current state of the world. And I had decided there's a lot of Russian characters, and in the American version of Muscle Bomber, which is Saturday Night Slam Masters, the bio says something like, is it Ukraine? Is it Kiev, Russia? I think is where they say he's from, Kiev, Russia, which of course even then was incorrect, anachronistic or whatever, because Ukraine is, I think, a recognized country in 1991, if I remember. Yeah, so I thought, oh, well, that's actually kind of interesting because there's no Ukrainian characters that I can think of in any of the fighting games. I'm a fighting game tragic. If you haven't already figured that out, there's a fighting game playlist. Terrible at the games, or very exceedingly mediocre at the very least, but I love them. I love fighting games. I love the characters. I love the world. That's why we're doing all this stuff. So yeah, I can't think of any other Ukrainian characters, so I thought that was really interesting, and that's why if you know Alexei Zalazov, aka Biff Slamkovich, which I think is just a ridiculous name, I'm using the Japanese names. I consider those the official names, and I also think just they're generally the superior names. The American names are just too silly for me, or on the nose or whatever. There's issues with some of the Japanese ones. We've tweaked a few. Rasta Gomez is sort of a bit of both. But yeah, essentially I didn't want the names. But yeah, you would know Alexei Zalazov is wearing red and yellow because he was the Soviet-era Russian. But now Ukraine is an independent country and has been. Obviously what's going on over there is horrible. We don't wish war on anyone. Again, I don't really want to weigh in too much, but I did think, okay, very interesting. Let's have a Ukrainian character. The Rockin' Russian becomes the Rockin' Ukrainian. We'll use his alt colors because his alt colors are yellow and blue, the Ukrainian colors. You can see in the anniversary episode, I think it was, we finally got him a new jacket. He kept his red jacket for the intro because I figured my interpretation of Zalazov is that he's a wild man in the ring. He's a rock and roll wrestler in the ring, but he's a bit stoic. He's a little bit stoic, a little bit reserved. And I just thought, he's not going to buy himself a new jacket. He's going to keep the jacket, and that will be our connection to what people know. He's not wearing the red trunks. He's not wearing the red headband, but he's still got his red jacket. And only now, on the anniversary, did he finally get himself a new jacket. And of course, the jacket is, I've added the sports stripes, and it's the blue and yellow, either for Ukraine. I also think, you look at the default colors of Lucky Colt, aka Gunlock, he's essentially yellow and blue. So it's kind of like they're the hypercannon colors as well. And I like these guys. They're just sort of like an old school tag team, simple gear, simple attitude. They're here to compete. They're white meat baby faces, that kind of thing. So I like that. And I just sort of thought, yeah, let's go with that. Somebody is wanting to recreate this version of Alexei Zalazov for their whatever their WWE 2K Fed is. So that intrigues me because I was worried. I thought he's got the blonde hair. He's all yellow. Is it a little too much? Is it a little too bland? Are these guys going to look a little bit lame to a modern eye? Maybe they do. I'm not sure. I think some people are jamming to the retro vibe. One thing I got to address, I got over the voice. I was doing this Goonie voice on commentary, and really, because you know, like I said, I did stuff online. I did a podcast before there was a podcast in like 2002 or 2003. So I've done commentary, I've done radio stuff before, but I haven't done it in a while. So I was real shabby, and I for some reason I was doing this sort of like quasi 90s Vince McMahon thing. Is what I was going for the commentary. Partly because I knew I was thinking about I'm going to try to do some voices for the characters. I need to create distinction between them all. I got over that. I've started to do something. Commentary is much more natural now. I think the commentary is better for it. I'm trying to learn, you know, distance from the mic and some of those things to try to improve the audio. We're coming up to the end of this episode. I'm going to maybe call an audible, and we'll do the second episode as well. Should we maybe make that a separate episode, though? Yeah. I'm going to upload these separately. So if you're watching live in the chat right now, if you're in the stream, just hang tight. So I'm going to end this one when this episode ends. We'll come back, we'll continue, and then I'll get some dinner later. So here you go. I thought this was cool. Even, you know, I've gotten more embellishments in the presentation now, but back this point, the win, Mike Hager's going to join them for the win. This is his boys. The canon is he trained them. He loves them. We love them. They're the hyper cannons. They get a win here. I wanted to get a tag team match in and just sort of establish these guys early on. They're kind of our main event guys, so get them in this episode. Get them in the next one. You can see it's going to cut off. Got to keep the Hellhole, represented. And I was hyping up the tournament, obviously here in the world title, and hoping that was enough. There were a lot of concerns going into this. I wasn't sure if I had enough, enough main event draws and things like that. So maybe in episode 2 we'll talk a little bit more about that, because there were sort of real booking concerns. But I want to thank everyone who is here. Make sure you like, subscribe. So this is live to Twitch right now as I'm doing it. You can head over to Twitch. I think it's McLucifer or whatever. Just look in the about or the description of any YouTube video, and you will find links to everything relevant. There is a Twitter that I just sort of put the word out. Obviously, I don't really keep a schedule, and it's been a real barrier to getting that affiliate. We got to get more live views, and I'm terrible at it. I forgot to mention that I was doing this. I don't think anyone's interested. If you're around, you're around. But yeah. Like, subscribe, do everything you can, support it, because it is brutal sometimes. So I will be back with a second retrospective watch-along. We're doing like an audio commentaries thing here. This is cool. Hopefully we'll talk more about the episode and some of the other stuff. And if you like that kind of stuff, if you just like hearing a guy rant about wrestling and blah, 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 this is a bit of fun. I don't know. It's a little bit of content with a capital C, the gross kind of content. We're doing that in the Hellhole. I haven't been able to stream very regularly. I'm just worn out. I'm very tired. Who knows how well this has gone? This has maybe gone terribly. I don't know. My judgment's impaired. I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm worn out. We're live, pal. And we'll be back again with episode 2 real soon. So if you're in the chat, I don't know, say hello and stick around. Thank you. Adios, amigos. Godspeed.